and you can start talking.
Well. Good evening, Mkoma Hopo. Good evening to I see literally thousands of people on this platform. I'm very excited because this is the first time that I've participated as a speaker. I've been an innocent bystander on this platform. I think yesterday, the 24th of January 2022 will go down as one of the most historic days in the history of the struggle of the working people of Zimbabwe for a just, a democratic, inclusive, and transformative society. I've absolutely no doubt in my mind that this date will occupy the same space that many other historic days occupy in our history, including our own independence on the 18th of April 1980. It goes down as well with historic days such as 11 November 1965, Ian Smith's obnoxious declaration, unilateral declaration of independence, of course, 1963 when ZANU was formed. The critical question is, why did the citizen form this movement? And I think to understand 2022, one must go back to the past, to 2008, 2009. On the 26th of February, 1999, the working people of Zimbabwe gathered at the Women's Bureau in Harare, organized by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, at the National Working People's Convention. There were thousands of Zimbabweans from all walks of life, represented by civic society in the form of the church, in the form of NGOs, human rights organizations, lawyers organizations, grassroots organizations, traditional leaders, and war veterans. They came to Harare, organized by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, and sat for 3 days and came up with 11 resolutions or declarations. The key mischief that the Zimbabweans spoke about way back in 1999 at the National Working People's Convention were, of course, number one, the issue of a broken down social contract, the issue of a status quo in respect of which there was a narrow elite led by ZANU-PF and President Robert Mugabe that had occupied all political space, that had occupied all physical space, that had occupied all moral space, that had essentially captured and privatized Zimbabwe. And in a scenario where the majority of the citizens were marginalized, were pauperized, were essentially third-class citizens in their country, there was a mischief that needed to be addressed, the mischief of exclusion, the mischief of a wrong or rather tired method of engagement between those that hold power and those that were victims or subjects or objects of that power. So the National Working People's Convention, if you look at its agenda and its resolutions, therefore sought to recalibrate a new form of engagement, a new form of dialogue with those that hold power and authority in Zimbabwe. So the first thing that they demanded was an address on the land question. As all of you know, the land question had become such a burning issue with the ZANU-PF making amazing clamor for it, but without actually acting on it. And some of you will remember the 1996 land reform program, where about 700 hectares of land were given and were taken and given to a handful of black professionals. So land and giving back to land to the people was one of the issues that the 1999 National Working People's Convention addressed, the issue of the economy. And remember, 1999 comes 2 years after 14 November 1997. 14 November 1997, Black Friday, some of us call it, is the day that the Zimbabwean currency collapsed by 70%, brought down by the weight of the participation of Zimbabwe in an illegal war in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a war that was costing Zimbabwe the sum of US $1 million a day. And of course, the payouts that had been made to war veterans, or 50,000 Zimbabwean dollar each to war veterans. These two things had a catalytic effect on the Zimbabwean currency, and it collapsed by 70%. And since that day, the Zimbabwean economy has never been the same. It has been on a downward spiral, bar the period during the GNU when we interrupted that downward spiral. And all of you will know that between 1997 and 2008, an 11-year period, the Zimbabwean economy lost 60% of its value in real terms, and we depreciated from modest growth rates, declines of -2% to -14% in that period. Inflation by December of 2008 was 500 billion%, the second highest in the history of mankind, only after Hungary in 1956. So the economy was key at that National Working People's Convention. There were other issues like violence, security sector reform, but the biggest issue that citizens spoke about was the democratic deficit affecting Zimbabwe. People suddenly realized that it was not sufficient to make trade union demands on the state. And many of you will recall that only a few months earlier, before the National Working People's Convention, President Mugabe had responded to calls for a change by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions by saying to Morgan Tsvangirayi and Gibson Sibanda that if you want to form your own political party, form your own political party, and we meet each other in the ballot box. So that was a very arrogant response to genuine requests by citizens to have their issues addressed and to seek a new point of intervention, a new point of engagement, a new consensus, because the old consensus based on legitimacy around the liberation struggle, or more appropriately, participating in a liberation struggle, it failed. And all of you know that even up to now, the yardstick for participation, the measure for participation, the license for participation under ZANU-PF has been whether or not you participated in the liberation struggle. So we remain stuck in the past, fighting a war that ended in 1979, 42 years ago. And that war mentality has created three terrible things that are arresting our society in Zimbabwe. And this is true in 1999 when the National Working People's Convention met, and now today, the 25th of January 2022. This is a culture of entitlement in ZANU-PF. They're entitled to govern us. They're entitled to steal. They're entitled to get fat contracts because they fought in the war of liberation. The second trait is the culture of impunity. So you've got entitlement and then you've got impunity. And impunity means we can simply get away with anything. We can simply do anything that we want. They've got literally a 007 agreement. Not a license to kill, but a license to loot a license, a blank check, as it were, a license to do anything and everything under the sun. And 42 years of independence under ZANU-PF, indeed, they've exercised that blank check. The third component of ZANU, which was true in 1999 and is true now, is what I call the messianic complex. This psychotic, if you like, mindset that we freed this country, therefore no one else can have it. It's only ZANU-PF. It's only ZANU-PF. And right now they're saying ED 2023, ED himself is saying ED 2030, I'll be there. President Mugabe, if you recall some of his birthday interviews on the 20th of February, you would say, I'll be here for a long time. Even his own wife says, you run Zimbabwe from the grave. So you've got this messianic complex. We are the Messiah. We saved you, so you must be totally indebted to us. In the Solomonic parable of the two women who fought over the baby, ZANU-PF would be that woman that says, let's cut the baby in half. If I can't have it, no one else can have it. Not Nelson Chamisa, not Morgan Tsvangirayi, not Gibson Sibanda, not Simba Makoni. No one else will have it. So these are the issues which we sought to deal with in 1999. And what was our answer? What was the remedy? The remedy was that, number one, let's address the economy. Let's make it more inclusive. Let's have independent courts. Let's have independent institutions. But ultimately, it was resolution number 11, which was the most important. Because resolution number 7, and of course, one of the most important resolutions was the demand for a new constitution. And if you were to take anything from that conference, the demand of a new constitution was key. The demand on land was key. And then this third resolution, which was resolution number 11, which was the mandate given to the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions to form a movement, not a political party, a movement to challenge ZANU-PF's authoritarian hegemony. And as all of you know, ZCT was then given a mandate to consult the working people of Zimbabwe, which they did between January of 1999 to September of 1999. You recall they would go into stadiums like Rufaro, like Baba Fields, and ask workers to show by exclamation what they wanted. And of course, workers chose to form this movement, which movement was then launched at Rufaro Stadium on the 11th of September 1999. That was the formation of the MDC. But over the years, this movement, which was formed by the citizen, which was owned by the citizen, to engage ZANU-PF, to create a new consensus, a new center of gravity with the power, did extremely well in 2000. We got 58 seats out of the contested 120. Those that we lost, we challenged 30 in the courts. We actually won 15 of those. That means that we became the majority party, theoretically. But of course, ZANU-PF appealed. By the time that the appeals were to be set, ZANU-PF through Chamisa, he had fired Chief Justice Anthony Gambi. He had fired virtually every white member of that bench, and they reconstituted a new Supreme Court under Godfrey Chitgaosiku. All our appeals, of course, were dismissed, and the greater damage was to be done in the massive judgments that this court issued, which reversed constitutional gains that had been made by the people of Zimbabwe. So the mass movement, as it grew over the years, it slowly turned into a political party. A political party is territorial. A political party is competitive internally and externally. A political party closes doors. It sees citizens as the competitors. So a political party easily develops contradictions which then mirror asymmetrically the very same status quo, the very same organization that it is seeking to replace. So very quickly, a political party can metamorphosize into the thing that it is seeking to replace. In other words, it quickly becomes part of the problem as opposed to being part of the solution. So contradictions developed in the movement as it transited from the movement into a political party. A movement has got a huge base. It is owned by the citizens. A political party is not owned by stakeholders. It's not owned by the church. It is not owned by the student movement. It is not owned by the women's movement. It is not owned by the labor movement that forms it. It becomes territorial. It's now owned by structures. It's now owned by individuals. It's now looking at its own immediate existence. And an existential threat to the political party is different from an existential threat to the movement. And part of the contradictions in the movement, of course, were the internal issues, particularly around succession, particularly around factions. And so you see different splits in 2005, different splits in 2013 or 14, 2014, and so forth. And those are arising structurally because the movement is no longer owned by the citizen, but the movement is now owned by constituencies that are not the citizen. So the citizen who sat at the National Working People's Convention is no longer the same citizen who sits in the structures of the citizen. But the regime takes advantage of that. The regime weaponizes the political party against itself. And there's no greater illustration of the weaponization of the political party against itself than the shenanigans around the name. The name MDC became a weapon used by the regime to bash us. The judgment of the Supreme Court of 2019, 30 March 2019, was the ultimate weaponization of that name. So the regime takes advantage of the contradictions inside, creates factions inside, which it captures and it uses to destroy the movement. So since 2020, we have seen the deliberate obliteration of our movement, arising primarily around this name, which became the point of entry in our fights. But ultimately, the challenge was the metamorphosization of the movement into a political party, and the loyalty of the new political party to narrow sectorial interests which are tangential to the original interest of the movement. And so in the last 2 years, we've seen unprecedented attacks on the party. We have lost our party head office. We lost the members of parliament. We lost the party offices across the length and breadth of the country. We lost the political funding which we're entitled to in terms of the Political Finance Act. We lost cadres, comrades resigned, comrades that you never would have thought would abandon ship, people like Porina Mpariwa, just to name a few. James Makore in Chitungwiza, just to name a few. These are founding fathers of the movement. James Makore was one of the key organizers of the movement way back in 1998 when we did the National Working People's Convention, in the National Constitutional Assembly, the NCA. James Makore was a key member. You can't write the history of the MDC without writing about James Makore, Morgan Tsvangirayi, Gibson Sibanda, Remius Makuaza, Sekai Holland, just to name a few individuals. So when you lose everything, you reflect. And we reflected. We observed what people were saying. We went into communities. Remember, by the end of the last quarter of last year, our president Nelson Chamisa went countrywide, listening to what the people were saying, and the people were basically saying, "We want a new form of engagement. We want a new consensus." Many of you think you were saying you want a new name. You were not saying that. You were basically saying that the modes of engagement we have been using in the last 10 years have become exhausted. So we need a new engine. And so we listened and we understood the core of what ordinary citizens were saying. They were not demanding rebranding, because rebranding, like the coup of 2017, is just a haircut. It's putting mascara and lipstick. And the ladies on this platform know that lipstick is lipstick. I'm Tendai Biti. You can't put lipstick on me and think that I can win the next Miss Zimbabwe contest. It will never happen. It can't happen. So we recognize that a structural change, was required. But what was this structural change? The structural change was a radical departure from a contested past of internal cannibalization, marinated with external exhausting and exhausted politics of ZANU-PF, politics of entitlement, politics of looting, politics of name calling. We realized that our citizens needed a radical departure from this contested past. In short, and I want comrades to citizens to understand this point very clearly. The citizens wanted a new consensus, shifting the political party back to the citizen. So in the 20 years of its existence, from 1999 to 2020, it was clear that in its discourse, in the process of the transformation of the movement into a people's organization, into a mass organization, to a political party, it had shifted the citizen from the center to the periphery. Therefore, what was required was a radical shift where we shifted the citizen from the periphery back to the center, a new consensus, a new mode of engagement. So the launch of the Citizens Coalition on Change by President Chamisa yesterday is not a rebranding. It is a new political organization. It is a new political consensus. It is a new ethos where we are shifting now the citizen from the periphery to the center. You watched what we did on Sunday. On Sunday, we were confirming candidates to the by-election that will be held on the 26th of March 2022. So in the past, we would simply have said the candidates that were victims, the MPs that were victims, are automatic candidates. We refused to do that. We said, let's go back in the communities and talk to the citizens and ask the citizens whether the men and women whom they initially gave the mandate on the 30th of July 2018 were still good enough, were still resonating with the people. And we did this countrywide. I was sent to do Mutari, Manicaland. I was in Chikanga, Danga, Mvura. I was in Ward 4 and Ward 5. I was in Mutasa, where we engaged with the citizens. And citizens says, yes, we have reservations about one or two, but for now, Mr. Vice President, go and tell the party, go and tell the president that the focus now is we want to set the record straight vis-a-vis Mr. Douglas Monzoro and vis-a-vis Mr. Emerson Mnangagwa. We will change course in 2023 when we look at other candidates, but for now, we've got something to settle, which is not internal, which is external. We took back power, not to our structures, away from our structures, to the citizen, to the center. So in a nutshell, the citizen a coalition for change represents a radical departure from a contested past, internally and externally, associated with ZANU-PF intransigence, ZANU-PF's politics of deceit, which in turn created contradictions inside, which resulted in a typical animal farm situation where you don't know pig from man and man from pig. So by forming this new movement, by forming this coalition, we are essentially saying that we are shifting back power to the citizen, as we did at the National Working People's Convention held at the Women's Bureau Center on the 26th of February 1998. So what is the focus then of the CCC? The focus is transformation. If you look at our new slogans, Shanduko Zimbabwe, Famba Zimbabwe Famba, Transformation Zimbabwe, Move Zimbabwe Move, Shanduko Zimbabwe, Vaka Zimbabwe Vaka, meaning transformation in Zimbabwe, build Zimbabwe, build Zimbabwe. So that is the focus. That is the focus, is to recreate a new Zimbabwe, founded on a new core set of values, the values of solidarity, the values of inclusivity, the values of equalness, the values of prosperity, the values of equal opportunity, values that are codified in Section 8 of our Constitution. That is the bigger picture. That is the bigger picture. That is the bigger picture. But how do you achieve this? You achieve this by placing your focus on the citizen. The Wanjiku, as Daniel Arap Moi would call them, the Walahoi, the Wananji, Vanu. So that is what we are doing. That is what we are doing, and we are going to see this in motion. You're going to see the thing in motion. Of course, the political structure is important. Of course, the political structure is important because you need it for organizational purpose. But the real decision making is the people. You have heard President Chamisa acknowledge that the biggest mistake was to allow narrow party interest to determine, for instance, the issue of candidates. Now, communities must choose their candidates. Traditional leaders must have a say. The church must have a say. The workers must have a say, and so forth. So it's a new radical departure. It's not, I think let's call it a makeover. This is not a makeover. This is a new structural beginning, an important beginning. And no wonder why the regime is in panic, because the regime fully understands what is happening now, that there's a new consensus, there's new alchemy, and there's a new focus on the citizen, the citizen, the citizen, the citizen. So what are the key issues apart from that constitute this utopia, the utopia of a new great Zimbabwe? I think the economy is going to be so key. The economy is going to be so key. You cannot have an economy where 95% of the people are unemployed or are in the informal economy. We need to address that. The contradictions and arbitrage brought by the use of the RTGS and the failed experiment and de-dollarization. That is going to be key. That is going to be a key fight in the 2023 election, as it will be a key fight in this by-election. People issues include the issues of pensions. Pensioners have suffered a double whammy. The loss of US $5.68 billion in 2008, and the loss of pensions now arising out of SI 33 of 2019, when Mutuli Ngube, the so-called Minister of Finance, woke up one morning and said our hard-earned US dollars was now local currency, and billions of dollars were lost in values, were lost in pensions. It's critical, it's criminal that a worker who was earning US $500 is now earning in real terms US $10. This runaway exchange rate, the parallel market rate is now 1:250. They're now trying to control it by switching off broad money supply on RTGS. So you now have the ironic situation that if you go to 4th Street, the black market, you can get the US dollar, but you can't get the RTGS to buy it because the Reserve Bank has simply shut the taps. But you can't physically deal with the exchange rate. The exchange rate will expose you. The exchange rate will show you what you truly are. A government of brigands, a government of roving bandits, Zigananda, as I call them. So the economy is going to be key in center stage. We want a transformative economy, an economy that is inclusive, an economy that creates jobs, an economy that you don't feel. You mustn't feel the economy. A citizen should just be able to do joy, to jabula, doing whatever he or she wants without feeling the economy. This economy, you feel it. It suffocates you. It kills you. It emasculates you. It captures you. It pauperizes you. Enough of that. And we have done it. Citizens know that we have done it in the brief period of the inclusive government. That's number one. Focus on the economy. Two, focus on the people's agenda. What is the people's agenda? The right to education. President Hichilema, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, when he assumed office, promised free education to Zambians, and he has delivered. We can do that. Education is a fundamental right. And so we must be able to provide education for our people, all the way to university. We've got resources to finance that. This country has got 63 minerals. This country has got the capacity of harvesting 100 tons of gold, 100 tons of gold. This country had world-class deposits of platinum, world-class deposits of diamonds. So let no one tell you that this economy can't afford free education for its citizens. What is the people's agenda? The people's agenda is health. I've got a grandfather who is ill, seriously ill. We have had to do everything from syringes, gloves, this test, that test, this test, that test. He has had a double attack of COVID. His lungs are not working, so he's now surviving on oxygen. That oxygen tank, I bought an oxygen tank for a lot of money only on Friday. It can't last for 3 days. Today I went, they want $1,000, they want this. It's just crazy. So the public health system is collapsed in this country. We have to deal with it because it is a citizen, agenda. Citizen agenda, grants to our people. We need to give grants. This country can afford to give grants to the citizen, unemployed citizen, of at least US $50, US $60. Don't tell me we don't have the money. We have the money. I know. I once ran this economy. I know we can afford to give grants to people living with disabilities. We can afford to give grants to our unemployed. We can afford to give grants to the orphaned. We can afford to give grants to the elderly people in Zimbabwe. People's agenda. The state of our infrastructure. The issue of DURA. DURA stands for Development and Urbanization of Rural Areas. It pains me, ladies and gentlemen, that 43 years after independence, 70% of Zimbabweans have no access to electricity. It pains me, citizens, that 43 years after independence, 56% of the Zimbabwean population use the bush as a toilet. And in some provinces, which I shall not mention by name because I don't want to upset anyone, in some provinces, 79% of the people use the toilet as a bush. 43 years after independence. So the social agenda, the transformation agenda must include dealing with poverty and the development and urbanization of rural areas. Why can't every house in our rural area be electrified? Why can't we have paved roads? Why can't we have markets that work? So this is the citizen agenda. These are the things that people will talk about if you go to a bar in Matepatepa, if you go to a deep tank in Otito. That's what people are discussing. They're talking about their crops. They're talking about their children. They're talking about the state of roads. Right now, because of the rains, bridges are not passable. This is the citizen agenda. This is the people's agenda, an agenda of transformation. But of course, people are talking about corruption. You cannot have the whole country owned by Tsvangirayi and his friend, Discovery. They've taken over ZUPCO. ZUPCO has been privatized. They've taken over banks, ZB Bank. They've taken over NASA, First Mutual Life. They've taken over the gold sector. For Christ's sake, they've taken over the Reserve Bank. Fidelity Life and Gold has been privatized. 60% of it has been given to Tsvangirayi. Zimbabwe might as well be changed to Kuda's view because he has literally taken over everything. The foreign exchange, 60% of the foreign exchange that is being distributed by the Reserve Bank. It's a lot of money. It's almost $40 million a week. 60% of it is going to Kuda and his cronies and the elites, the who is who of ZANU-PF. So the citizen agenda includes the obligation to deal with the leakages that are afflicting our country. For me, the biggest agenda on transformation is to modernize our country. What does this entail? It entails technology, the adoption and use of block technology, the adoption and use of 6G technology. I'm a lawyer. Sitting in my office right now. My office is full of piles and piles of files. Why shouldn't I be doing e-filing, e-presentations, and arguing cases from the comfort of my library here? It can't happen. This country, ladies and gentlemen, stopped working way back in the 60s. So we are caught up in a rut in the 60s. Every other country has moved on. If you go to South Africa, it's like another continent. If you go to Nairobi, it's like another continent. If you go to Francistown or Gaborone, it's like another continent. Even if you go to Washington, Maputo, it's like another continent. Zimbabwe was put on pause by ZANU-PF. It has froze, which is why I keep on saying that if you wake up someone who died in Zimbabwe in 1968, nothing has changed. Put him in Samora Machel. The only thing that will confuse him is that Samora Machel is now Samora Machel. It used to be Jameson Avenue. And of course, the other thing that will confuse him is that little Mbuyani and the statue at the corner of Samora Machel. Otherwise, nothing has changed. So we have been frozen. And ZANU-PF is deliberately underdeveloped us. Some of you have read Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Us. Someone should write a PhD thesis entitled How ZANU-PF Underdeveloped Zimbabwe. Not sanctions, not the opposition, not the Western world. How ZANU-PF deliberately underdeveloped Zimbabwe. So in a nutshell, the citizen agenda is about transformation. In a nutshell, the citizen agenda is about opportunities. In a nutshell, the citizen agenda is about prosperity. In a nutshell, the citizen agenda is about inclusivity. In a nutshell, the citizen agenda is about empowerment, taking power from the periphery to the center. That means our electoral delivery system must work because elections represent the checkpoint, the marking point where the citizen has got the right of recalling power. So it's so important in the matters of giving citizens to power that the electoral decision making must work. The other thing that must work are institutions. Strong institutions protect the citizen. Strong institutions protect democracy. Third, the constitution. We cannot have a constitution that is lacerated by amendments and amendments. Emerson Mnangagwa has only been in power for 4 years, but he has lacerated this constitution in over 40 amendments. That is the basic structure of our constitution. That is not good enough. Mr. Mugabe did that in 20 amendments over 13 years. The Zimbabwean constitution has been amended much more times than the American constitution. Yet the American constitution has been existing for 3 centuries. It's a pity, and that can go on. So to conclude, my brother Wopel and the listeners, the Citizens Coalition on Change is a radical departure from a contested past dominated by intolerance, exclusivity, division, false starts, and a false social contract. The Citizens Coalition for Change seeks to create a new matrix of engagement, one based on the citizen. It seeks to shift attention. It seeks to grab the citizen from the periphery to the center. Chinhu chenyu, chinhu chevanhu, wandiku, walala hoi, wananji. That is the agenda. But what is the end goal? The end goal is a new great Zimbabwe. And what is the new great Zimbabwe? It is an inclusive, just, modern society with the super highways, with spaghetti roads, bullet trains, functional courts, functional judiciary, electronic newspapers, and so forth.